started and was on that K-8 board for 9 years, then was on the Hanover Park board for a year, and then now have been working for New Jersey school boards for 9 years. So, the state mandated that school board members had to be trained. So they are the only public officials in the state that have mandatory training requirements. So then that is the work of New Jersey school boards then, is to provide that mandatory training, and then to assist and help boards in any way that we can. So I have the pleasure of serving all of the boards in Morris County and Essex County. So that's about 65 school districts. So I am a busy lady, but I really appreciate the opportunity to really get out and see how, we all kind of do the same work of focusing on student achievement, but I'll do it a little bit differently. So it's really a pleasure to, be part of a community and see a community that cares about the education. So when we talk about a superintendent search, while it's extremely important to get your input and find out what's important to you, I think it's important for you to understand the process that we're going to be going through. So that's why I want to start out tonight talking about the process first. And then once you have an understanding of that, then we're going to go ahead and hear from you and get some input from you. So having said that, I'm going to get started here. So I just have a PowerPoint to kind of help guide us through that process. So these are just the areas that I'm going to go through. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with it. So I always like to start with what are those legal and ethical requirements for hiring a superintendent. So one of the requirements that the state has is that anyone that sits in that seat as a superintendent has to have a certain certificate. So that certificate that they have to have is a school administrator certificate. So they either have to have the certificate itself or the certificate of eligibility. So certificate of eligibility means they've fulfilled all the requirements, they just have not sat in the seat yet. So then, you need to do that last piece then to get the actual certificate. Right now, New Jersey requires, that anyone who works here has to move here within a year if they don't currently live here. I know that's one of the things that, there's a task force looking at, how can we, recruit more teachers and try and enhance the teacher pool, and that's one of the things they're looking at, whether this requirement is, hurting New Jersey or helping it, but, it's a consideration. And then any board member that has a conflict of interest, and by a conflict of interest means if they have a relative that works in the district, then that board member is not able to participate in the process. And really, the School Ethics Commission is the body that oversees that and says, that when a board member has a conflict, it's any and all matters related to the process. So one of the other requirements too has to do with the contract. So a superintendent's tenure in the district is their contract. So the state has said that the minimum contract that a board can give a superintendent is 3 years. The maximum contract is 5 years. But what makes it a little complicated is that the contract has to end on June 30th. So which means in order for you to fit within that 3-year and that 5-year window, you would have to start on July 1st. Which is great if you could do that, but sometimes based on the timing of when you are conducting your search, you don't always have that opportunity. But one of the things that happens is the 3-year and the 5-year never goes away, and the June 30th never goes away. So if, let's say, an example, if you finished your search and the person you selected couldn't start until September 1, like I said, you still have to stay within the 3 and the 5 years. It still has to end on June 30th. So the minimum contract the board could offer that person would be 3 years and 10 months, and the maximum would be 4 years and 10 months. So just kind of recognizing then that that's the window that we're working within all the time, and those requirements are always there in front of us. So, the superintendents used to have a salary cap, right? And the salary cap was initially put together saying that a superintendent shouldn't ever make more money than the governor. And then they had different levels of that based on the size of the district. So we were finding that, New Jersey School Board, or New Jersey was losing too many superintendents, right? So in 2019, the cap was lifted. So just wanted to provide, to you what the average salary was for superintendents, and this was, a year ago in 2021. But we also have to recognize too that Morris County has a lot of K-8 districts. So your district is one of the larger districts as a K-12 district, so just also recognizing that there are different size districts here in Morris County. So after the salary caps were taken away then, so what the condition is from the state in terms of looking at the salary of a superintendent is that the salary that is requested has to be comparable to others in the region with similar credentials, experience, enrollment, achievement challenges, and grade spans. So then kind of the extra set of eyes then that kind of holds the board accountable to fulfilling what that comparability requirement is the Morris County Superintendent. So the county superintendent has to look at the contract and approve the contract before the board can approve the person to be your next superintendent. So again, making sure that there's that extra set of eyes on that. So, one of the most important parts of the superintendent search process is confidentiality. So, one of the things that, as prospective candidates are looking at your search, looking at your district, want to make sure that their name is not going to get out there, especially in a district your size will potentially attract sitting superintendents. I had a call from one a couple weeks ago, and the very first question is, Charlene, can you guarantee me that my confidentiality is going to be maintained? Because I'm not even going to start the application process unless you can tell me that. So, sometimes there is the thought sometimes that perhaps, as the staff, should we be serving in part of the interviews? As the community, should we be part of the process? But we recognize now that there's a trade-off. The trade-off is, do we want to make sure that we are getting and attracting the very best person we possibly can for our students, and recognizing that that trade-off then is confidentiality. So the only group that is legally bound to confidentiality is the Board of Ed through the Code of Ethics. One of the tenets of the Code of Ethics is that they'll uphold confidentiality. So they're the only group where there would be any repercussions for breaking confidentiality. So that's why now when searches are conducted, they're conducted typically with just the board as being part of the process, again, for that very reason of making sure that we are not doing anything to keep the very best person from wanting to come here. And think about it, they have families and don't want their boards to find out, their community to find out, their staff to find out that they are looking somewhere else. So we kind of have to respect that that's part of the process. So just, as we go through this, that's why opportunities like tonight are so important, so that we can find out what's important to you, can find out, what you're interested in the next superintendent. So, like I said, the board is legally charged with hiring a superintendent. We just talked about the importance of confidentiality, but what's really important, like I said, is that the board can't do this in a vacuum. That the superintendent is really the educational leader of your entire community. So the only way you can know who the right person is for your community is to hear from the stakeholders themselves about what's important to them. Because the board interacts differently and looks for different things in a superintendent than the staff does, than the parents do, than the community does, do the students. So we have to have kind of a really broad picture and a broad understanding of what it is that's important to your community, so that we, as we're looking for this person, we're looking for this person, who meets the needs of the entire community. So just really kind of wanted to make it clear how important that is. And then when the board is looking at the applications, the board is looking at the applications not through the lens of just what's important to them, but what's important to all of the stakeholders. And then, we would use that information or use that lens to say, okay, recognizing that these are the qualities that are important to our community, who do we want to bring in for a first round interview? Who do we want to move through the process? What kind of questions are we going to ask them to find out the types of things that matter to our community? So we have to make sure then that we are armed with that information. So we put a calendar together. So to kind of help give us some guidance through the process. So, the calendar right now says if everything went absolutely perfect, could we make the July 1 start date? Maybe, but like I said, everything would have to be absolutely perfect. And always tell the boards that we really don't want the calendar to drive the process, that we want to be sure that the absolute thing that drives the process is, did we find the right person? And we say to the board, like, you can't settle. Like, it has to be someone that you are all unanimously and enthusiastically excited about, that this is the right person. And if it's not, we go out, we start all over again. It's of no cost to the board. The important part is, are we finding that right person? Because it's just such an important position in your community. So like I said, like, everything would have to go absolutely perfect in order for this to be done. By the end of April, in order then to have the person would have to have 60 days in their contract, which some have longer than that, in terms of the notification that they would have to give to their current district. So as I said, pretty much all the stars would have to align in order for this to take place. So we really need to kind of prepare ourselves that, yeah, we might be able to do this, but it's probably more likely that we may not be able to. But recognize that we have a calendar, that we're trying to do the best we can, but we're also looking at this from the perspective of our main priority is finding the right person. So this is the ad that was put together, that is, kind of helps describe your district, because it's important that we kind of send a message of who we are. And then the bottom part in the qualifications then is kind of the quantitative part of this, and it's really about casting a net, kind of. So if we talk about a qualification as being required, that means that the person absolutely has to have it. And if they don't possess that qualification, then the board cannot interview them, the board cannot consider them, because we said it's required. If we say that something is preferred, then that means, let's say you have it and I don't, then you might be a better match to the qualifications that the board is looking for, that the community is looking for, but it doesn't preclude me from being considered. So that then is kind of what makes the difference. So it's saying, hey, this is important, but we're not going to close the door on someone that doesn't have it. So we know then that certificate is required, that's just a given. Then said that it's important that someone has had experience as an administrator, not specifically specifying, does it have to be a principal, could it be a supervisor, could it be a director, any combination thereof, but saying they need to have been a leader in some sort or administrator in some sort, before kind of being the chief executive officer of your district. Saying that it would be great if they, have previously been a superintendent or an assistant superintendent. Thought that having experience in special education was important, and then experience in crisis management. So these were the areas then that were identified, so that if someone is looking at this position, so they're now kind of getting a sense then of what the district's about, and then kind of what are those things that are important. So just to kind of let you know how your search is being advertised. So, New Jersey School Boards, on our website, we would like to think of ourselves as the place to go for advertising superintendent searches. And then also there are other professional organizations, like the business administrators have an organization, the principals, the superintendent. So it's in all of those places. We send it to different colleges. We have a database of over 850 people that have previously applied for searches. So they are all made aware of your search. And then there are also a couple online options that were selected. So your ad is on nj.com, not the paper version, just the online version, and then njschools.com. So that's the outreach that's currently taking place then to be able to attract different candidates to your search. So as part of this process, one of the things, since, like you say, since New Jersey School Boards, we support the work of boards, we want to make sure that boards have all the information that they, would help them through this process. So we have an application that they have to fill out, because a lot of times if you just ask for a resume and a cover letter, my resume may be 4 pages and yours is 1 page, so I may not have the same or similar information. So by having everyone fill out the same application, then we know that we have consistent information on every applicant. And we'll see in a minute that the board also had the ability to identify 3 questions that every applicant has to answer. Then we do ask for that resume and cover letter, a copy of that certificate. So you have to have a master's degree in order to be qualified for the school administrator certificate. So then we ask for transcripts for any schooling beyond a master's degree. They are able to provide some references, and then we also ask for their last performance evaluation. So that's all in an online portal of information then that will be available to the board. So right now the board does not have access to this information because we want them to hear your input first and find out what's important to the staff and the community before, like I said, so that they're looking at the application through that lens. So again, like I said, this is kind of the whole profile of information that the board has on every single applicant. So I had mentioned then that there was the opportunity to have 3 custom questions. So the way the questions are worded, it starts out specifically describe your administrative and education leadership experience in, and then kind of fill in the blank of what that would be, and then make it clear, it said that we're looking for actual accomplishments rather than theoretical proposals. So the 3 areas then that were identified were personnel management, including evaluation and staff development, community relations and outreach, and crisis management. So every applicant will be answering these 3 questions, and then it's always a standard part of New Jersey School Board's application to talk about like what you think makes for an important working relationship between the board and the superintendent. So those 4 questions will be answered by every applicant in addition to just the regular things on the application. So then what happens then? So the application window closes March 27th, so we've still got a couple of weeks, like 2.5 weeks here to go. And so we typically try and leave it open about a month. That's about how long to kind of get the advertising done, people, giving thought to it, getting their application material in. And then, like I said, then the board will review the application pool based on all the information. So, I'll be doing input sessions similar to the one I did tonight. Doing tonight, we'll be doing it with staff, we'll be doing it with students, like just kind of all the different stakeholders to make sure then that we're hearing what's important to everyone. So that, when the board sits down to go through the pool of applicants, the goal is then that we would be identifying people that, like to bring in for a first round interview. So what does those interviews look like? So, and this is just in general. So typically the first round interview is very structured, that we want to make sure that everyone is treated exactly the same way, so that if, say, you move forward and I don't, it's not because you were asked easier questions or you were treated differently than I was, it's because we both had the same opportunity, and you succeeded at that opportunity better than I did. So it's usually we'll say 8 to 10 applicants. So in an average search, we get about 35 to 40 people perhaps that will apply for your job. So the board is not held fixed to a number. If anything, we say err on the side of caution. Err on the side of, if you think that somebody looks interesting, bring them in. At the very worst, it's 45 minutes of your time versus not being sure about that person. So that's why, it's important to, like I said, to kind of go through the applications, go through the material, and sit down and have that conversation about, who we think would, be the best candidates to come in for this. So like I said, and it's usually like this board member asked question 1, this asked question 2, this board member asked question 3. Like I said, it's really structured. And really, we're just trying to find out, is this person someone I want to learn more about? And a lot of times you meet someone you usually can sometimes know within about 5 minutes, right? Whether that's the case or not. But we want to give everyone the opportunity to answer the questions, and usually the questions kind of go through a vast array of, maybe asking a finance question and a curriculum question and a personnel question, and kind of a little bit of everything, just to kind of, get a sense of their background. So then we'd have a conversation then, once we're done with those first round interviews. So I think we had it set up to take place over 3 nights. Then we would have a conversation then to talk about then, okay, who did stand out then? Who would we like to bring back to find out more about? So then in the second round, you typically kind of cut the pool in half then. So if we were starting out with 8 to 10, we're now kind of down to 4 to 5. And so in this case now, it can be less structured and longer. So 60, 90 minutes, something like that. And we might find that there's some questions that we want to ask of everybody, but there might be some things that are specific to each person. Maybe I had a really strong K-8 background, but you didn't see much high school in my background. So you might want to ask me questions about that you wouldn't need to ask somebody else. So again, kind of doing that digging and probing, and then it can be a little bit more back and forth. So if this board member asks a question and the applicant's response generates a question for another board member, you can kind of have that back and forth. This also sometimes is the opportunity to have scenarios where you might give them a situation and have them come prepared to come and talk about something that perhaps is actually going on in your district, and have them do a presentation. So I guess really there's just more flexibility in this round. I've also seen where boards have set up like a Google Drive and said, send us a document that's a letter to a parent, send us a document that, you were having a difficult conversation with somebody, just different ways to get more information and dig a little bit deeper on some of these applicants that you now have identified that you want to know more about. Because by the end of the second round then, we really then should be thinking about saying, can I see this person sitting in the chair? Can I see them as our next superintendent? And so, for those people then that have demonstrated that, yes, I could see them sitting in that chair, then we want to then talk about then who we want to move forward to a finalist round. So again, kind of cutting it in half. And sometimes boards, by this point, one person has been like so far heads and tails above everybody else that I've seen some boards just bring that one person back and just sit down for maybe 2 or 3 hours and just chat with this person. Sometimes it's not that clear, and you need to bring a couple people back to really dig and find out some more. But ideally, if everything is moving the way that we would hope it would, that one person will have emerged as the finalist that we can see as being the right person for this position. So then when we do move someone forward as a finalist, and that's really what we call them, so at this point, they're not your next superintendent, they're just the finalist. That's the one person that we're moving forward with. So then that's then, again, because of that need for confidentiality, that's then when we start doing the background checking. Again, because once they are told then that they're the one finalist, then I'll say, okay, tell who you need to tell, and then let me know when the board can start, checking references. And so, one of the boxes that people have to check on the application is, in addition to references that they provided, one of the boxes on the application says, check here, that allows the board to call or, check whoever they want to. So just recognizing, that that's all part of that vetting process. And a lot of this too will depend on the confidentiality of the person that's coming here. If they're a sitting superintendent, they may be less likely to want you to come to their district or to want to come here and meet everyone. So a lot of this is really dependent on who that finalist is and what level of confidentiality is needed as we're moving forward. So then once we have kind of then through the vetting process and are still sure that this is the person we're moving forward with, then we would engage in contract negotiations. There's really not too much in terms of what's in a contract to be negotiated. I mean, at one point, New Jersey School Boards had like a model contract that we put together, and the Superintendents Association had one that they put together, and we'd each say, you ask for this, they'd say, you ask for that. Now we have one that we do jointly, because there's very few, other than salary and the length of the contract, there's really very few things left that are to be negotiated. So once the board and the finalists have come to an agreement, and like I said, then that contract goes to the county superintendent for her approval. And then once she offers that approval, then the board would be able then to pass a resolution then to hire that person. So that's pretty much the process that we'll be going through. So before we get into the input, so part of what we're doing tonight is taking in-person input, but want you to know that there's also going to be a survey that's going to come out within the next couple of days here that will have all of the same questions and the things that we are going to talk about tonight, so that even if you're here tonight and you give input, you are still welcome. A lot of times you get home and you're like, oh, I wish I would have said this, or wish I would have said that. So still have the opportunity then to go home, fill out the survey. Obviously we'd like to get a much wider, as much as there are a lot of people here tonight, like to hear as many voices as we possibly can. So know then that you will have that opportunity as well. So having said that, the next piece of this then is kind of that informal input that Leo had mentioned, that that I will be talking to you about, and that's really what it is having a conversation and finding out from you what's important to you. I have my trustee flip chart here and a marker, and I'm going to record your feedback and type it all up, and so that way, like I said, when we're looking at this, we're looking at this through the lens of what's important to everyone. So we really want to hear what's important to you. So I'm going to go through each one of these questions, and we'll be happy to take feedback. We were kind of figuring out, I think that was kind of like why we also, people wanted to come closer, because I might have a hard time hearing you from back there, or getting the mic, but we'll do the best we can in the way we are here. So I guess before I do this, I just want to make sure, did anyone have any questions about the process? So.
It's not about the process, it's about one of the terms. I'm hoping, I don't know if I have a different definition. Crisis management in education, is that like a defined discipline or term that everyone would interpret the same way when they're describing that experience?
So this was an area that was important to the board, as we talked about safety and security, and kind of saying, just valuing the safety of the students, of the staff, of this being a safe learning environment, and people that have had experience, and that being a priority for them.
Is that defined, or they have an opportunity to get that clarification?
They do, but some of it, I guess some of the clarification will also come in the way they answer the question, right? And kind of seeing if the way they interpret it matches what we're looking for. So. Thank you. Okay, anyone else have a question about the process?
I have a question. 20% of our board is considered conflict of interest. They can't be a part of this process. They can't see who's coming in. They can't vote on anything. They basically can't manage the superintendent, which is the most important position in the district. How can we be sure we're going to get the greatest candidate if 20% can't be involved or manage it at all?
Okay, so I don't know if everyone could hear his question, basically saying that 20% of the board can't participate in this process because they have a conflict. So how can they be sure? You, I guess, have the benefit of having a 10-member board, right? Which is not that usual in the state. So having 8 people is, is most boards, the most members they have are 9. The boards are either 5 members, 7 members, or 9 members, unless they have a sensei relationship like you do. One of the things that came up like through the school ethics commissions, there were some boards that were down to like 2 people who could participate in the search. And, we're saying, like, what can we do? Like, we only have 2 people. And the school ethics commission came back and said, so what? Like, if you move forward with these 2 people, if you need to go ahead and get any outside help or anything to help you, like, we're considering this to be a committee. Committee then would be doing the work, and the only concern would be if the board had to vote, then 2 people is not enough, and they would have to, would have to have a majority, and then they would have to, kind of pass a resolution that says takes everyone's conflicts away, but they can't be part of the process. They can only vote at the end. So as much as you are concerned about 8 people, recognize that the expertise of 8 people is, the state has said they were happy with just 2 people sometimes being able to do it. So know that 8 people is still a strong number of, I understand your concern, but it's, it's something that's required, that, again, because if you have someone that works in the district, that thought is that there could be some benefit or advantage to your relative who works in the district, like you might be picking somebody who could help out your relative. So they just want to make sure that saying that you would be worse off if you had someone that was in the search and was doing it for the wrong reasons to help their relative, or to pose some kind of a conflict, as opposed to 8 people who are here who have no conflicts, whose sole responsibility is to find the right person.
So do we not trust grown adults to make those decisions though?
I don't know that that's our choice, right?
I mean, if we vote them in and their whole goal is to manage a superintendent, and then you tell them they can't do their job, that's kind of problematic, don't you think?
It's not up to me. It's one of the things that when we go into boards, kind of say, like, we're not the board police. So there is a school ethics commission whose responsibility it is to make these decisions, and people who are running for the board would know that they have this conflict before they run for the board. So should be taking that into consideration then, if the public is having the expectation that they want someone who can participate in everything. So, okay, any other questions about the process? Okay, so it said the important part here then is to hear from you about what's important to you. So we're going to start out talking about the strengths of the schools in the community. So if we think about the fact that as much as we are selecting someone who, to be the next superintendent, that person's also looking at us and selecting us. They're watching our board meetings, or they're looking at our minutes. They're looking at what we're doing. They're looking at our website, looking at why is this a good place? A superintendent really gets enmeshed in the community, right? They're your educational leader of your community. They're part of who you are. They're the fabric of helping your children. So that right match has to work both ways. They have to be a good match for you, and you have to be a good match for them. So one of the things that people will, candidates will ask is, well, why would I want to come and work here? Why is this a good place to live and work? So I would like to hear that from you and have you share why you think this is a good place to live or work. And I am going to write that down. So we're going to start talking about the strengths. Always good to talk about the positive first. So if anyone would like to share why this is a good place to live or work, I would be happy to take that input. Anyone? You all must be. You're one of the top paying? Okay. So you're one of the top paying districts, okay? Anyone else?
Much room for improvement?
Oh, for superintendent? Okay.
Oh, yeah, for superintendent.
Okay.
For the job they're applying for.
Okay. I'm sorry, what did you say?
Much room for improvement.
Much room. That's a strength. Yeah, okay.
Lots of opportunity.
Okay. Any,
Dedicated teachers and staff.
dedicated teachers and staff. The disadvantage of being left-handed, right? My hand is all blue. Okay.
I would say as a whole, Roxbury is a very family-oriented and involved community. It cares a lot about the whole picture.
So she said that they're a family-oriented and involved community, which I can certainly see with everyone here tonight, and said cares about the whole picture. Okay, someone has their hand up.
My youngest has already graduated, but I've always been impressed with how the district is always looking for innovative ways to look at technology and how it can come into the K-12 program.
So I heard the innovative part with technology, but I didn't hear the last piece of it.
Into the K-12, they look at technology, whether you're smart or
So innovative technology, K-12. Okay, good. Uh-huh.
The strong music and arts.
Strong music and arts. Good. Okay, anything else? Uh-huh.
We have the nicest kids in Morristown.
You don't want to say the whole state of New Jersey? Yeah, no. Okay. Okay. Anything else? So she said the nicest kids in Morristown.
Because that's to keep them in the county and there's some competition.
Okay.
One of the things I've noticed just living here in the last 10 years is, and I see this as a strength and a positive, is the increasing diversity of the students coming in and the families moving into the community.
Great, thank you. She said increasing diversity of students and families, okay?
I would say in general, we're a very balanced community.
A balanced community?
Not too rich, not too poor. We have parks, we have houses, areas that are dense, areas that are less dense. You get a little bit of everything in
So
Roxbury.
just socioeconomic or just in general, you mean balanced?
Both, in terms of density,
Density.
socioeconomic.
So just in general, right?
Oh, I'm already done.
But I'll write some of these as examples.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Stand way in the back.
We have a great sense of community and respect between the staff and students.
Great, thank you. So great sense of respect between staff and students. Okay, anyone else? Uh-huh.
I think generally speaking, there is a positive relationship between parents and teachers, parents and administration. There are always issues that come up, but I have found that the people that are on the other side of the emails are responsive and typically very courteous. I appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Okay, anyone else?
A lot of Roxbury alumni either remain in the area or come back to the area, so that's pretty good.
Are you one of them or not? Okay.
And all this is amazing, the amount of people that I see around town.
Okay. great. Anyone else? Okay, one more.
I'd say they have, the school district and police department have very good working relationship. And I feel that, you know, they, all work together to keep our students safe.
Just building on that, and I'd probably say expanded, not just between the school and that department, but also like our public services, our town council, our
So
library.
not just the police.
Like it's a very, and social services, I think like, to the point everyone's making, it's a very connected community.
Okay, good. Okay, you guys filled up a whole piece of paper. Any other strengths before I move on to the next one? Right, well, you've convinced me that I don't want to work here. Yeah, this is great. Move this over here and move on to the next question then. So this next question talks about kind of helping me, or, you know, how can we help the candidate understand, like, what does it mean to, like, be part of Roxbury? Like, how do you get Roxbury? What about Roxbury is different from other places? If you were to come, like, when you say alumni come back, like, what does that mean? Like, if you were to kind of paint a picture of Roxbury, what does that picture look like? Like, help me get what it means to be someone from Roxbury and to be part of the community.
I too am one of the alumni that has not left Roxbury. I think Roxbury Township, although we are a big town, honestly, we are a very small town at the heart of everything. When we have crises, which unfortunately we have in this town this week, we all come together, whether it's our school board, our council, our fire, and our police. We have a very, very strong sense of community in Roxbury Township. Oh, and I'm your deputy mayor.
I think you got Rick
Can I just ask, because since we've been talking about alumni, how many people in the room here are from Roxbury? That's pretty amazing, right? That's great. I just got goosebumps. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we know then that we are a small town with a big heart. We all come together. We have a strong sense of community. Is there anything else that you would say, yep, that's Roxbury, that defines it?
The students feel like we have a great amount of things we can share when it comes to working with teachers and administrators. So in Roxbury, teachers work with us to help us with what our needs are to be met.
Great, thanks. So that the Roxbury teachers work with the students to help their needs, to help them feel like their needs are being met? Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Let's see, can I see the next question here? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk then about district issues. What are things that are either coming up or happening right now that are going to require the attention of the next superintendent to address, or things that we might see coming down the pipe a little bit? So either anything right now or anything we see that's going to be coming down the way to make sure then that this person, you know, would have the skills and the background to be able to address these things. Okay, somebody way in the back there.
I definitely think that this national and local issue around mental health is something that's really important. It gets integrated into
So mental
teaching
health.
kids and the community how to, you know, find, you know, stress relief, how to self-manage, and how to reach out for support when needed.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, somebody in the back over here.
I think since moving here, like over 10 years ago, just the level of where we are as a district, we're like close to, I think it's 220 right now, and trending downward in the past 10 years, where other surrounding towns with, you know, lower taxes are like in the 50s. When you look at like total schools in New Jersey, so we're bordering and heading in a direction closer to towns, and no offense to anyone, but like Atlantic City and other areas, and I just wonder like what other towns are doing to increase where they are from a ranking, while Roxbury has dropped significantly over the past 10 years.
Okay, so we go to the ranking now. Okay. And there was somebody else back there, right? Go ahead there.
Same question.
Oh, okay.
That's a big question.
That is a big question.
So that's the other one.
Okay, I'll put a star next to it. How's that? Okay.
Like the education program, and the education has gone downhill significantly, and people that I know that have looked and said, you know, would you move to Roxbury? I tell them no. I'm like, I would go to these towns because, you know, the education programs are much better, and the sports programs are much better in some of these towns, so.
Okay.
Bullying.
Bullying.
Bullying, HIV, student conflict.
Bullying, HIV, and student conflict. Okay.
The reaction to like conflict in school, like how teachers and administrators should respond to teachers acting out, and what should be done to prevent those students to continue acting out.
So reactions to conflict, the way we respond to conflict, right? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, good. Thank you. We're getting a good cross-section of responses here. I really appreciate it because these are things that we wouldn't hear without hearing your voice, so it really makes a difference to have this picture. Okay, so now let's talk about background training, experience that the new superintendent should have, and what do I mean by that? So in the next question, we're going to look at kind of their leadership styles and their qualities. This one is like, what work should they have done before they come here? Do you think it's important they were a superintendent? Do you think it's important they were a principal? Do you think it was important they were a classroom teacher? Is it important they worked in a K-12 district? Like, what are those things you think are valuable or important for someone to have to come, you know, to come sit in this position? So she said a good amount of time having been spent in the classroom as a classroom teacher.
I put a star next to that.
Okay.
I think they also need to have experience being a principal, because sometimes they go from like being a supervisor, but they don't have that principal mentality. So from the top, they kind of push stuff down to the principals, and the principals then push it down to the teachers. And that person at the top who's never been a principal doesn't understand how that fallout occurs. So being a principal is super important.
Great, thank you. Okay. I'm sorry, experience what?
At all the levels.
Experience at all the levels.
The individual people.
Okay, thank you.
So I think two things. One is just having a proven track record. Again, going back to the rankings, someone that's capable of like moving the town up and showing like proven results. And then the second part of that is like someone, you know, preferably, doesn't have to be, but someone with a doctorate already, as all the other superintendents are, I think would be beneficial as well too.
Great, thank you.
I think someone who's pursued some level of like corporate leadership training on the side, you know, outside of even outside of a school setting, someone who's able to get all of their staff together, team building.
So she said someone who's pursued corporate leadership training, just more so that it can have some expertise in team building, right? Okay, great. Anything else?
Someone who has curriculum are still using programs that should, be revamped, and I know they're in revision, like speaking K to 5, but revision doesn't necessarily mean actually choosing a new curriculum to better suit the needs of our learners.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so you can see we're painting a picture here, right? We don't ask for too much, right? We just want them to have done everything, right?
Can I ask one, I don't know if it doesn't super fit into any of these, but it's with respect to the bullying that, because I'm kind of nervous that, you know, the HIB investigation, people are really concentrated on numbers, and I know a lot of superintendents wanna keep those findings down. Is there a way to say, I don't care if you had a lot of findings, as long as you resolve those findings appropriately? That's almost more impressive to me than if you kept your findings number down, because that doesn't really show me that you resolved those issues, just because you didn't find anything in your investigation. Accountability, yeah.
Okay. So they have accountability and a proven course of action for resolving HIB investigations, right? Or, and it's really not even resolving it, but making sure you have a process in place to prevent them from happening, right? Yeah.
Kids can predict their consequences that might curb the, sort of starting to predict them.
Yeah, 'cause last thing I want is the board to sit there and go, oh, this person has so many, you know, findings, but that's not the number that's important. It's the resolution, the proper resolution of those findings that's actually the important measure.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, good. So then now we'll move on to the next piece of it then, of looking at, okay, so now if we said we know kind of what these skills are that we want them to come with, what kind of a leader do we want them to be? So that's where we think about, you know, collaborative, like what are those types of, like, leader? Open door policy. Okay. Okay,
Responsive.
responsive, okay. Okay,
Don't set hard rules just based on numbers, to be fair. If there's a clear problem, like, in a certain student population, the numbers are just getting to where another section can be opened, behaviorally, they would really benefit from smaller class size instead of a hard no, just looking at that student need.
so kind of be responsive to student needs. So-
Yeah, and, you know, not just saying this is the number, it's at it.
Okay. So look at student needs when making your decisions, right? Okay,
Transparency.
okay. Thank you.
Understanding to a variety of different parents, like I'm a special needs parent with an autistic child, and he's very high needs. And a lot of superintendents really don't have a lot of special needs experience, so somebody with a little understanding in that area as well.
So understanding of, you know, different parents' needs based on the needs of their students?
Students' needs / parents' needs, that, you know, not every student is the same and has the same learning style or ability.
Okay. So I'll say based on varying abilities, right? Good point, thank you. Anyone
I think accountability to the point where you could take responsibility for the good in the district, but also where there's shortcomings, own that, because our Board of Ed tends to become the scapegoat for issues, and we see this more and more, that they're taking the heat for things that the superintendent should be addressing and owning, and it's not happening. And then somebody who can really respect the fundamental rights of parents, we talked about how involved our families are in that town, and really have that respect, and be able to kind of bring that to the table and own their position and be able to improve, like, we're talking about rankings, not ignore that our rankings are not, and say, what can we do better?
So respect the fundamental rights of parents and address their concerns, right?
Absolutely.
Be proactive.
Not just say.
And
yes,
address,
these are human.
and proactively address their concerns, how's that?
Perfect.
See, we'll get it together here. Good, okay. And then there are hands back all over the place here. I'm not sure if my back was turned, which one went up first, but he's got the microphone, so he wins, right? Yeah.
Be mindful of the morale of those in the board office and people around them, and teachers and really everybody, you know, working with them and for them.
Good, thank you.
I'll go back.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, someone who has the ability to have very good relationship with the teachers and the administration. And all of the staff, not just the teachers.
So good relationship with all staff, right?
Mine kind of goes from like least important to what I think is most important. I need a good public speaker, somebody that can own a room, somebody that when they walk in, they command respect. Ownership, who somebody mentioned, is huge with me. You gotta own the good and the bad. I think that's big. And then I really like transparency, but I'd like to add a little asterisk to transparency when you can. Because there's a lot of parts of this job where everybody would love to know everything that's going on, but you can't. But in the aspects that we are allowed to divulge what's going on, transparency is key.
Good, thank you. So present, visible, right, in the community?
Yes. Sporting events, community events. Yeah, we're going to.
So, present, visible in the classrooms and school and community events, right? Okay,
I second that, just great involvement with the students, because your decisions are gonna affect the majority, it's the students who you're affecting, like the parents are part of the picture, teachers, but at the end of the day, you're there to help the students get the best possible education. So actually knowing what they're going through and being present in the different schools is a huge thing to see what you're actually working with, because the parent side and teacher side might be different, but talking with actual students to figure out what's going on from a student's perspective.
good, thank you. So we lose our school. I either have to write faster or you got okay.
Understand that state minimum should be the beginning and not the crux to lean on for policies and any kind of rules. It should be the starting point, and you should add to that to make it better.
Okay, state mandates are the minimum or the starting point?
So another thing, going back to like the community that we talked about in the beginning, and I think the woman up there mentioned about like the special needs, we need someone that's like, what's a characteristic, but like a people person versus like a business owner that like runs the district as like just numbers and focusing on numbers. We need someone that's more focused on the people, more so than the numbers. But still get those rankings back up. The numbers.
Yeah.
I would say that they do have to be a numbers person. They have to be aware that, you know, the pot is only so big, so get creative and maybe engage more. And I also like to see them be more visible. Like, how many times have they been to
all the schools, like, was, normally see like Read Across America, maybe they're there once, but maybe like quarterly visits or, so that the kids know who the person is. Cause, especially in the younger grades, they're very excited, like, oh my God, I met the superintendent today, and, something like that.
Great, thank you. Yep, so I have present and visible in the classrooms and the school and the community events.
But create that budget too, keep an eye on it.
Right, so I have numbers person, the pot's only so big, so get creative, right? Okay, we're flipping to another sheet here. So when it snows tomorrow, I know what I'm gonna be doing, right? Okay, anyone else? Okay, good. So the last thing that was on here was basically saying, okay, if you could ask an interview question, like what do you think is a great interview question to ask of the candidates?
Can you commit to your full contract?
Okay.
What is the leading drive behind making those big decisions?
What is the leading drive behind making those big decisions? Why Roxbury? What brought you here? Okay.
I have two questions. How do you plan to support teachers and staff to improve retention and attract new talent? And, oh, we do that.
You should put start staff.
Okay, I'm trying to write as fast as I can. Hopefully I'll be able to read my own writing tomorrow, right? Okay.
I have one last question. What plans do you have for counselor to student ratio for high schools and throughout the district?
Also a start.
Okay. Okay, also a star, okay.
What leadership experience do you have outside of the professional scope, coaching or something of that nature?
Okay, that's a good one. I don't know if anyone's ever asked that before, that's a good question, yeah.
I mean, in the same vein, I think because this is a choice district on the performing arts and music, it would be equally important to know if they like what their sentiments are and.
I'm sorry, I was.
With the performing arts and music and the arts in general. So, yes, it's great. I'm a sports person, I like the idea of teamwork, but, to promote and continue to build on our excellence in the performing arts, like, I think it's important that this person has a fine appreciation and understanding of that as well.
So how would we put that in a question?
Well, maybe instead of sports, say extracurricular, because that feels.
I think maybe it's something around what is your sentiment and commitment
To the performing arts. Okay. Any other questions?
I think it's always good to ask, what is the biggest disappointment you saw
What
in
is
your
your
career,
biggest
and what
disappointment?
lessons would you take from it?
Great question.
You can learn a lot about someone with that question, right?
So, mine's about student achievement, because none of the three custom questions talked about student achievement, and that's why we're here, right? So, we're about to issue the NJGPA next week to our high school kids, which defines achievement on a pretty narrow focus. I'd like to know, how does the superintendent define student achievement? How do they measure it? And if that is different from the narrow focus that the state prescribes, what can they do to affect change at the state level to broaden student achievement?
Okay, good.
I would ask, what do they know about Roxbury? What have they heard? What do they know?
Okay, good.
What do you feel makes a successful student? Because if your goal is to empower the students, what should the students have out of that?
So what do you think makes for a successful student, right?
Go along with, what they know about Roxbury, what would be the first thing that they would choose to work on?
What would be the first thing they would choose to work on?
Coming from somewhere else, what do they think we need to improve on?
So, and where do they think we need improvement, right? Okay, I'm just gonna need 1 second to switch off the piece of paper again. Okay. Any other questions? Uh-huh. So are they willing to commit a counselor at the high school level? To help juniors and seniors, you said, to help juniors and seniors prepare for what comes next? Okay. Uh-huh.
What are your plans to improve student safety in all of the schools?
What are your plans to improve student safety in all the schools?
Both outside present and inside.
Their philosophy on handling criticism.
What's their philosophy on handling criticism? Uh-huh.
I would ask a question about, their working relationship with Board of Education members, and maybe a challenge that they work through with their board.
Okay, you said working relationship with the Board of Ed and a challenge that they may have worked through. Okay, uh-huh. So she said, what internal stakeholders would you like to meet with to get the lay of the land? Okay. Anyone else?
I also think, Kevin, you just sparked something. How would you, if hindsight was 2020, how would you handle COVID differently now if you were to go back in terms of, you know, handling state mandates? How would you handle that in this situation?
Okay, so saying, if she said if hindsight was 2020, how would you have handled COVID differently now, in light of the response to some of the state mandates, right? Okay, anyone else? Okay, great job. You guys were really a good group. I feel like I learned so much about Roxbury tonight. I really appreciate the time that everyone took, the input that you shared. So, you know, this video of, you know, going through the, you know, talking about the process, like I said, will be up on the website. So if there are people here you know of that weren't here that, you know, think would benefit from, you know, understanding the process, to please make sure you get the word out, and then also be looking for the survey to come. And again, encourage anyone who would like to fill it out, and also to share this information with others, because really the more people we hear from, you know, the more we learn, the better it is for the process. So again, we'd just like to say thank you to everyone who is here tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you just for really being an interested part of this process. So recognizing that this started as a board meeting, this needs to end as a board meeting, right? So you guys, someone needs to make a motion to adjourn or whatever else you need to do.
I don't know, but
Thank you,
everybody else,
everyone.
I think that Charlene did a wonderful job of moderating.
And thank you, Mr. Paterno, great job with the mic.
I'm here for you, Brian. And the audience, I want to thank you. I think if a potential candidate was sitting here tonight, he'd say, that's where I want to be.
Or she, right? Yeah.
Or she.
Yeah, or she.
This is generic. We have these little things with the QR codes on. If you want to take a couple and give them to your neighbors or whatever, the QR code will take you right to roxbury.org page of information, and it's the same one that's been on there for, I guess, almost 2 weeks now, whatever. It will be updated tomorrow with the link for to see the presentation, the video of the presentation tonight. And Charlene, will the survey go live tomorrow? Will that be, is it ready to roll? It is. It is. So as soon as, and you'll be putting that on the website tomorrow?
As soon as I get the link from me.
All right, so give us tomorrow being Friday. Hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow, the information page will be updated. It'll have all those links on, and then people can participate in the survey, and the survey is
Essentially the same.
very much much what was done tonight, but do not hesitate to fill it out. All these comments here are now documented, but it doesn't hurt if you want to go back on the survey. You might want to say something a little different, put something additional in, please do. And encourage your friends, neighbors, and even the neighbor you don't like so much, give them one of those things and ask them to fill it out. We really want it to be representative of the communities, and I put that S on that because Mount Arlington is part of our high school community, and the Mount Arlington people are invited. On the survey, there is a question asking which community you're in, Roxbury, Mount Arlington, or other, because our teachers are also welcome to fill it out, and they don't all necessarily live in one of those two communities. It just gives us a sense that we're not going to look at your answers based upon where you live. It'll give us a broad sense of, do we have 50% participation from Roxbury and 20 from here and 30 from there or whatever. So, hey, those numbers add to 100. How did I do that?
Look at you.
That's an accident, sorry. So, thank you very much. Because this is an official meeting, we are not doing board comments at the end because it was supposed to be your meeting, even though it's our meeting. So, we're gonna do the official closing. So, I think what we have to do is get a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I second it.
So, did Brian make the motion from the back?
I second it.
And seconded. All board members in favor? Aye. All opposed? I don't hear anything.
Thank you, everyone.